Hello, hi, I'm Pearl, and welcome. This is a live session on Zoom for Learn It Live, and this is Unconditional Love Summer Solstice Celebration. And I'm just checking because this one I have actually people signed up, so it's possible we might have people joining us. But I'm going to start now because we can't wait. Summer Solstice is actually going to be happening in less than 10 minutes. Now, let me just explain about Summer Solstice for those of you who don't know. Um, Very often we talk about it as being the longest day of the year, the first day of summer, all those kind of things. But the exact moment of summer solstice at 10:13 this morning is going to be the moment that the sun is furthest from the equator, which means that we in the Northern Hemisphere are closer to the sun, I think, than ever we would be. But I think that really, if I say the sun is furthest from the equator, then you know where we are. We're in the longest day of the year. And really, we have a lot of ideas about what's spiritual about summer solstice, all that kind of thing. I was awake this morning at sunrise, actually four-ish in the morning, and the sun was well up, I tell you. And I looked out, and there was a beautiful half moon there, and I thought that was just perfect. I went outside and I looked up, and it's half moon. And to me, that really emphasized the way I'm feeling about summer solstice, which is that this is a turning point. So going from the time we're actually getting longer and longer days to when we're getting shorter days. Now, as I say, I was looking outside in the garden. I was not dancing around with flowers in my hair in a field. I looked at the sun and moon, and then I went back to bed because that was my way of loving myself today. But a lot of people have, believe in all kinds of different spiritual significance of summer solstice. And why not? Why not? We all have different beliefs, different ideas, different theories. It doesn't matter. If you want to get up first thing in the morning and go for a long walk on the beach, that's great. If you want to hide under the bedclothes and put a face mask on and try and sleep, that's up to you as well. Personally, although I do enjoy this time of year, I find it hard not to get any sleep with the sunshine. So, although I love it, I'm actually grateful that we've reached the longest day and it's time to start getting a little bit shorter. And other people, think this is the best thing in the world. So, but everybody's different, and we're going to be celebrating summer solstice in about 6 minutes exactly. And if you're watching this on replay, obviously this has already happened. But one of the most amazing things about a moment like this, or any astronomical moment, astrological moment, any moment that you like, is that it's a moment that we can set our intention. Whether or not you believe in the power, the energy of a day like today, the energy of a sunny day, whatever, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you believe and how you use your belief. Okay. And the reason I say that is because the moment that I felt that I really understood unconditional love, really understood unconditional love, was when I was in Hawaii on Maui. And when I arrived, not the first place I stayed, that was went a bit awry, but the second place I stayed, he said to me, "Be careful because there's a Kona wind." I said, "Well, what's a Kona wind?" I said, "Wind that's coming from Kona." Okay. But they said it's very rare, doesn't happen that often. And when you set your intention during a Kona wind, it's very powerful. And what happened was I enjoyed this beautiful retreat center resort that I was staying in, and I did a lot of meditation. And as I said, I came to this point of understanding unconditional love. And in the moment of understanding unconditional love, I set my intention. And it wasn't really well thought out, it just kind of came out of me. And it was that I would share what I had learned, I would share the understanding of unconditional love with the world. Because in that moment, I realized how special, how important it was. And I'm going to go on and teach that to you. And I'm going to do that in just a few minutes. But what we're going to do is we're going to wait until after the actual moment of summer solstice. So we're going to have almost like a summer solstice meditation, maybe, but really just a moment to think about this turning point in your life, in your year, in your day even, or any kind of cycle that you have. It doesn't matter. But sometimes when we think about these turning points, we realize that we can take that energy, that momentum, and use it in a way that serves us, serves other people, serves the world. And for me, I'm lucky because I think that my path, my vocation, my calling is as a teacher. And so in that role, it's really, really important to serve other people. Okay. There may be other vocations where it's not paramount. Even if on the surface we can look that we're serving people, there's a deeper self-interest there. But for me, I've always discovered that you meet the right people, the right teachers along the way. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And also the teacher becomes the student becomes the teacher. It doesn't matter. For me, what matters is I set my intention. And the biggest part of what I do is trying to figure out, or should be trying to figure out, how I can serve the people for whom I am the right teacher. So I'm not going to be the right teacher for everybody. And that's okay. And I love doing Learn It Live because it's helping me to figure these things out. When I teach what I need, and I gain a deeper understanding. Very much like when I write about things, I gain a deeper understanding as I try to teach something, I try to explain it, it becomes clearer to me. Okay. And also I realized actually I do know this. It's in here somewhere. So we are now 2 minutes away from the moment of summer solstice. And again, we really have had in the last, I don't know, couple of years, sort of almost like a second 60s, very, very lovey. And we have an explosion of things like meditation and even things like paganism, which is a big part of English community, but English life, really, if we look at a lot of the things. But it was also very hidden for a very long time. And really, I think the important thing is no matter what you label yourself or call yourself, whatever religion, as the Dalai Lama would say, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, who come from the Buddhist practice, whatever your belief system, whatever your religion, just follow it. When people used to come to them and say, can I be a Buddhist? They would say, well, do you already have a religion? Yes, I'm a Catholic. So follow that religion, because at the root, every single religion that I know of, that's like, I would say, a proper religion, has as its heart the same thing, which is trying to live well, trying to live in a way that respects us and respects the people around us. I don't think I know of any religion that really is about being mean to anybody else. Sometimes we can misinterpret religions, we can misinterpret belief systems, but I believe at its heart that all religions honor life, honor, the sacred. We might just have a different opinion about what is sacred. Are you ready? We're here. It's summer solstice time. It is 10:13 in the morning on Tuesday, the 21st of June in 2022. It's hard to say 2022, but here we are, and celebrations are going in Glastonbury, around Stonehenge. They're going around the world, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. And so I wish you a wonderful summer solstice. There we go. Let's just take a moment. We've done the timing, that's fine. Now, maybe you set your intention for that moment. If you didn't, that's okay. We'll carry on, and we're going to delve into this idea of unconditional love. And that's great. My alarm's gone. We've done that. And let's talk about unconditional love. Now, a long time ago, I went to a spiritual retreat with Don Miguel Ruiz. And I I really knew that he was my teacher. I had a feeling he was my teacher. And we got there and there was a welcome. And he stood up on the stage. And at the time, I was really struggling with my relationship with probably my ex-boyfriend. You know, we loved each other. We couldn't be together. We had a moment together, then it went the other way. It was just constantly seemed to be a real struggle. And Don Miguel got up and he spoke to us all. It was beautiful. We all laughed. It was great. And then he said, we have this idea in life, he said. We have our beloved, the person that we love more than anything in the world. And we turn to them and we say, my darling, I love you so much. If you would just do what I tell you, we could have such a happy life. And of course, we all laughed, because when you hear it out like that, it's ridiculous, isn't it? That we have this love, we love somebody, and we want them to do what we want them to do. And that's conditional love. And I laughed. But as I laughed, I also laughed at myself, because I didn't know how to do things any differently. I didn't know how to be any different. I didn't know how can I be anything different to that? Because it's what I've learned and what I've been taught my whole life. So I went to bed and feeling very confused, feeling, okay, here I am. I have discovered the teacher. I've come to the teacher. He has taught me. I haven't got a clue what's going on. So I went to bed. And we were in Sedona, one of the best places in the world for looking at the stars. And the night before, it had been very cloudy, rainy. I woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just felt, go outside. And I went outside, and I looked up, and even in this area where there were lights and things like that, the stars were incredible. And I knew I had to go out, further out into this retreat center where there were no lights, look up at the stars. And so I did. I didn't think about rattlesnakes. I didn't think about coyotes. I just wandered off. And as I got out into the dark and I looked up at the stars, it was amazing. It was a revelation to look up and see more stars than I had ever thought possible. Stars and stars and stars. So many, infinite. And in that moment, I understood unconditional love. In that moment, I looked up and I thought, of course, it's never ending. It's so, love doesn't end. And I realized the people that I loved so much, like my nephews, my nieces, I realized that even if they did the very, very worst things in the world, I would never, ever stop loving them. I would always love them unconditionally. If they went to prison, I would visit them in prison. If they hurt me, I would forgive them. Everything I would let go of. And as I looked up, I could suddenly see the unconditional love for my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. In that moment, I understood that I loved him unconditionally. And I understood that that love goes around us, all the way through us. And it's like nighttime. In the nighttime, we can't see the sun, but we know it's there. We know it's there because we still feel the heat of the sun from the day. We know that it is just around the other side of the planet. So the sun is always there. The sun is, rather, we're around the other side of the sun. But the sun is always there. Okay? Even if there's a shadow, the shadow is caused by the sun. And suddenly I understood that unconditional love, and it changed everything. And it was wonderful because I had one of those moments of clarity. I felt really spiritual and all that kind of stuff. And I left that left that place and went on. And when I did, I then had a massage and a Native American healing, which caused what some people call an awakening. And the reason I believe that I had that awakening was because I had started to allow the unconditional love for myself, to realize that I didn't have to be happy or spiritual or making a lot of money or pretty or a certain way. I didn't have to be anything in order to love myself. And so I gave myself permission to be me, to just be me. And when I did that, what happened was a lot of very painful things came up, because they were all the things that I've been hiding, thinking that if I felt those things, I wasn't good enough. And so I had to let go of the sense of trying to be better than anybody else, because I had to let go of the sense of trying to be better than myself, pretending to be someone better, even if that meant something as simple as being somebody who got up and meditated for 5 hours. You know, I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to do that to love myself. And so I woke up to, most importantly, that unconditional love for myself, and started to realize, again, as Don Miguel Ruiz would say, that I am the love of my own life. And just like this summer solstice, we think of it as a moment, but really it's a turning point in a journey that we are making as a planet around the sun. It's a turning point. And from that moment, what happened was I had to be honest. I had to be truthful with myself. I had to learn how to love myself. And as many people would say, it's not learning to love ourselves. It's unlearning how not to love ourselves. And it starts with everything, with all the things that we've been taught, all the things that we've put on ourselves. I must eat this. I must wake up. I must do this amount of work. I must do this. And as I'm saying it, I realize how much I do it to myself now. Constantly trying to break down that, what Don Miguel Ruiz would call domestication. Constantly trying to fight that ego that tells me I have to be a certain way. And the truth is that our ego is just trying to protect us. It's just trying to protect itself also. But the ego is really trying to use all the things that we've learned since we were babies. We've learned not to touch a hot oven. We've learned to use an oven glove when we're lifting things out of the oven. We've learned how to use the shower. We've learned how to use a laptop. We've learned how to use Zoom. All these things are the way we've learned to cope in this world. We learn to set an alarm. We learn to get up and do something else. We learn to take medication in a certain way if we need it. We learn how to order food, how to have a tenancy, a rental, how to have a mortgage. These things that are constructs of the human world, but that we need to navigate in order to live in that world. Unless you want to go and live in an ashram where everybody's naked. Maybe you want to do that, and maybe there's no money, and maybe you don't have to deal with that. That's another way of loving ourselves unconditionally. But I still haven't got from there to Hawaii. There was a lot more journeying and traveling involved. And part of that was traveling on the Camino de Santiago. And as I traveled along the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage with my rucksack, every day I was panicking. Every day I was freaking out. How do I do this? I've never done this before. How do I know where I'm going? Which path should I take? What should I eat? Actually, that was easy because I usually just had what they call the menu del dias. They say, do you want the menu del dias? I say yes, which is the menu of the day. Yes, I'll just put it in front of me and I'll eat it. That's fine. But all these things I was trying to understand, what is my path? What is the way forward? What's my next step? Where do I go next? How do I take care of myself? Can I walk today or do I need to rest? And the mantra that came to me on that journey as I was walking, and I would say to myself at night as I was lying in my bed, new bed every night pretty much. I would lie there and I would freak out about, what am I going to do tomorrow? Where am I going to go? How am I going to manage this? Can I make it? And I'll share two mantras actually, because one was easy. I just say to myself, I will figure it out. I will figure it out. But the other times when I was somewhere and I was so freaking out that I was in the wrong place, that I had come so far off my path, I would be lying there thinking, I am totally messing this up. I'm not using the rude words. I am totally messing this up and I am completely the wrong place and I don't know what I'm doing. I would think of that journey and I would think of how everything had fallen into place. I would think of how I had ended up in the right place. I would think of the moments when I would be walking along and something would remind me that I was on the right path. And the mantra was this: I am perfect, and every step I take is perfect. Because I realized as I went on, if I made a mistake one day, the next day I would realize why I had made that mistake, or a bit further on, or a bit further on. Everything was important, everything was essential, everything was perfect. There were no mistakes. It was all part of a perfect journey that I was on. And I think I probably began that really just thinking about the Camino, that it was all falling into place and that if I listened to my heart, I would end up in the right place at the right time. And that began even at the very, very beginning when I had found a place to stay, a treehouse in Granada in Spain. And yet everything I heard about the Camino said, well, it's the north of Spain along the top, the Camino Frances. And I had this pull to Granada, I had this pull to this little treehouse. And then I went to the office of the Camino, the office of the St. James's Society, I think. And when I went there, on the wall was this big map. And on the wall were marked all the different ways. And I didn't know there were lots of different ways. I only knew the top one. But actually, there are many, many different ways. There's no wrong way to walk the Camino. There's a route up from Portugal, which I ended up on as well. And there's a route from, I think it's Salamanca. I know it's from Salamanca. And then there's another route as well. But on this map was marked the route from Granada. And I saw it and I thought, yes, oh, great. That makes sense because in my heart, I know that my route is Granada. I know my route is from there. And when I got there, it all started to fall into place and make sense. And I realized I was on an ancient path, which was called the route Mozarab. And once upon a time, that whole area of Spain was Arabic. So there are so many mosques there, all that kind of thing. And in fact, many of the churches were originally mosques, I think, or Arabic buildings. And you can see that when you go there and you see all the architecture. And as I went there, what I learned about that route was that even when this was an Arabic part of the world, pilgrims were welcomed. In fact, the pilgrimage went back before Christianity. It went back thousands of years. In fact, I'm not sure we know when it started. But all the time, whether that was a Christian area, a Catholic area, an Arabic area, the pilgrims had been honoured and they had been welcomed and they had been given safe passage through that area. because it was recognized that this was a Camino, a pilgrimage that was open to everybody of every faith, even though very often we think of it as Catholic because it ends where you get your Compostela is in Santiago. There's a big cathedral, everything there. But the truth is, many people believe that the Camino actually ends in Finisterre, which is on the coast and where I ended my pilgrimage, pretty much. And there's other endings, other places that people believe that it ends. So I think possibly the truest thing we can say is that all the roads pass through Santiago, and they may not end there. But as I was doing this pilgrimage, I knew in my heart, I am perfect, and every step I take is perfect. I don't mean right. I don't mean that I'm always right. But I mean that even when things are mistakes, they're part of my perfect journey. In the same way that for a child who makes mistakes when they're learning to walk is not a failure. It's not wrong. It's not bad. They are just learning to walk in the same way that I'm really learning to live still. Always will be learning to live like everybody. So I carried on that journey and went a few other places, did a few other things, climbed a few pyramids, went up in a few hot air balloons, well, just the one. And eventually I ended up in Hawaii. And as I sat meditating, I was meditating really most importantly on my ex-boyfriend, who was definitely an ex by that point. And the reason I was meditating on him was because I had so much pain. I had so much heartbreak. I had so much heartache from losing him, from feeling I was never going to see him again, from the death of that relationship. And it's very hard sometimes when we love somebody so very, very much, and we feel so powerfully that we should be together. We feel so powerfully that they should be with us. We should be doing things together. And our heart is constantly saying, yes, and it keeps reminding us of this person. So how can I listen to my heart and yet this person is doing something else? They're not with me. And my heart just kept saying that he's making a mistake. He's with the wrong person. He should be with me. He's in the wrong place. He should be with me. Everything, he should be with me. And I sat there and I meditated, and it was beautiful. I can't imagine a better place to meditate. I was sitting on top of a mountain in Maui, which is lovely even for Hawaii, top of a mountain, looking down to the beach, beautiful ocean. I had a little hut. There was a little hut just at that point. There was all these trees. You could hear the wind in the trees. There was a labyrinth. There were statues of the Buddha. It was a beautiful pool and a hot tub. I had a 4-poster bed. I mean, it was a vegan resort. Everything was vegan. And they'd broken their no alcohol rule and were serving Prosecco. I mean, there were rainbows breaking out everywhere. It was the time when they had the most humpback whales. They had the most turtles. They had all these turtles everywhere. I mean, it was incredible. It was one of the most amazing places I've ever been to in my life. And I sat there and I just felt my heart is breaking. Because no matter how beautiful this, no matter how amazing this is, my heart is breaking because the one I love is not with me. And when you learn these things like unconditional love, you also learn that we're all loving each other all the time, unconditionally. So how can he love me unconditionally and yet not be with me, yet not choose to be with me, be with someone else? It makes you crazy. And I sat there and I thought of him And I held him in my heart, aware that he was with somebody else now. And I meditated on him, trying to listen, trying to find the truth of the situation. And in that moment, it became clear to me that he was perfect and his journey was perfect. Every step he takes is perfect. And in that moment, I realized that he was perfect and I was perfect. There was just perfection, nothing else. And in that moment, understanding that allowed me to open my heart and set him free. To open my heart and to know that even if there was pain, even if there was loneliness and sadness and missing someone, it didn't make it any less perfect. It didn't mean there was any less love. And in that moment of understanding, in that moment when I felt the truth, that's when I felt also the great desire to set my intention to share this with the world. But you remember, as I said, when I discovered the unconditional love for myself, it took time for me to not just understand unconditional love, but to practice it, to practice unconditional love for myself. And it takes time and practice to practice unconditional love for other people as well. So after that, a few days after that, I returned home and I saw my family. I spent time with them. And for a moment, I thought I could stay. I thought I could stay in England with them. But then I realized that I still had more. I still had more journeying, more adventures to have. And also, I needed to practice that unconditional love. And actually, I needed the distance. I needed the distance from them in order to practice unconditional love for them. I needed the space to sit, to meditate, to not lose that feeling, not lose that understanding that I'd had of unconditional love. So I went on and I went to Croatia. I went to Dubrovnik, and I found a place to stay. And again, I often find a place to stay, and when I turn up, it's completely different to what I expected. But I found a deserted beach because it was February and very cold. Although very hot in the sun, I managed to get hypothermia and sunburn on the same day. And I always remember that day when I woke up the next morning, I went down to this little deserted beach. And it was wonderful. I had this beautiful sea, I had a little jetty, and also they were building like a beach bar. So what I had was I had a lovely wooden platform. And again, it was a great place to meditate. I had this wooden meditation platform, or I could sit on the jetty, and I sat there and I meditated and I practiced meditation, where I focus on each member of my close family, one at a time. I held them in my heart, just like I'd held my boyfriend up on the top of Maui, ex-boyfriend. Held him and waited and worked with the mantra, this person is perfect, and every step they take is perfect. And sometimes that time when I sat down to meditate, there was a lot of conflict going on. They weren't always happy with me going off traveling and doing other things. So in that moment, I sat there, and when I called them into my heart and I held them, it wasn't peaceful, it wasn't quiet, it wasn't mung bean love, all that kind of business. It was hard, it was painful, it was hurtful, it was really harsh feeling to hold somebody who I loved, but around whom I had so many other emotions. And I realized that it's possible to find the truth, to find the clear, cool water of unconditional love for someone. Even just for a second, even just for a moment, to have the feeling of my sister is perfect and every step she takes is perfect. Even if I don't believe what she's doing is right, even if I don't believe that my mother is right, I know that she is perfect and her journey is perfect. And so for me, that's unconditional love, to have a moment where I sit there every morning, every evening, and hold that person in my heart. And as I do so, I allow them to be themselves. I allow them to be who they are. I stop resisting the truth of who they are. And I allow them to go on their own journey. And I become at peace with where they are, who they are, what they are. So, for example, we could have a family member who has ill health. I'm going to take it out there a little bit. So, for example, we could have a family member who is struggling with alcoholism. And so I could take this person who I'm imagining to make life easier for us all, and hold this person in my heart and say, this person is perfect, and every step they take is perfect. They're on a journey in their life, living their own life, making their own mistakes, which are perfect, because without making the mistakes, can they learn? Can they grow? Can they change? And when we do that, it becomes easier to accept the challenges of that relationship, the challenges we might have when we love somebody closely who has a problem with alcohol or drugs. And we'll learn that we still love them. We will always love them, no matter what they do. But we also stop trying to control them. We stop trying to change them. We stop believing that life would be great if they would just do what we tell them to do. As Don Miguel Ruiz said, if somebody has a health issue, we stop believing that life will be perfect if they just changed, if they just got well. And we start to accept that health issue is part of their life, their journey. Like I accept the dogs part of my journey. And sometimes they have a few things to say. But that is life. It's beautiful, wonderful, complicated. Nature is perfect, but it's not always exactly what we want. It's not always easy. We have sunny days, we have cloudy days, we have short days, we have long days. It's not always what is right for us, but it's what we have. As you can hear, the dogs are putting me off. But the reason for this talk today, this class, this lesson, this summer solstice celebration, is for those of you who want to learn more about unconditional love, try to understand it. And of course, like all these spiritual concepts, I am trying to put something that is so far beyond words into words. I could sit here for a million years trying to describe the ocean, and you would never understand the beauty of the ocean from my words. And in fact, one of the things that I often find very healing for me is to sit by the ocean and just witness it. Because when I do that, I realize, guess what? I'm not in charge. And it's not up to me to try and control the people in my life. It's not even really up to me to try and control myself. I can master myself. I can learn self-mastery. I can learn to understand how to use boundaries, how to use discipline. But for me, it's always about mastery, not about control. Because sometimes we try to control ourselves and we go against ourselves to our own detriment when we push ourselves too hard, when we decide that we must follow some belief and wake up at the same time each morning or do the same thing, because we are never the same. We are never the same. We're changing every moment. There will never be another day when I am this pearl. Tomorrow I will be a different pearl. And all of my friends and family are also changing day by day. And one of the things I used to say on my Camino and when I was traveling, I'd be talking to people and they would say, don't you have a hotel? You must book a hotel. Where are you going tomorrow? What are you doing tomorrow? Where are you staying tomorrow night? And this was very often in hostels and places where I was staying. And I would often say, well, I don't know who I'm going to be tomorrow. So I'll make that decision tomorrow morning. And I'm not suggesting that you live your life like that all the time. Sometimes we have to make plans, sometimes we have to make commitments. But that was a very special time for me, a time a bit like going to university, when it was very an intensive period of learning. And what often happened to me on those days, on that Camino de la Luna, as I call it, was that I would go to bed, one person, and then in the middle of the night or early in the morning, something would happen. So perhaps there would be something where I was staying. Perhaps I would get up and go and look at the stars. Perhaps there would be an incredible sunrise and something would change within me. Perhaps something as big as that understanding of unconditional love. Many days it was understanding of forgiveness, an understanding of courage, or a realization of truth, or an understanding of and a practice of reconciliation. All these different things that I talk about in my books, the Camino de Luna series. And one of the ways that we can practice unconditional love for ourselves is to allow ourselves to change, to allow ourselves to decide differently. So we can make a plan, and then the next day we can say, no, I'm going to do something different. I need to change my plan. We give ourselves permission to be a different person. And very often that's a permission that we don't allow the people around us, because we say, hey, you are this. I think you're this. I want you to be this. I want you to be the person that I've got to know, who I think you should be. And as they say, one of the best ways we can understand love is to know that if we love something, then we set it free. And sometimes setting ourselves free, setting other people free, setting our lives free is the most powerful thing that we can do. And when I went on my Camino de la Luna, I set myself free. I set myself free to go anywhere, to do anything that my heart dictated, which is how I ended up in Maui, in Santiago, and in Dubrovnik, which are all really special places for me, just like going on to Bhutan. So usually at this point, getting to the end of the session, I would open it up for questions, but I don't actually have anybody in this session today. So let me see if I can come up with some common questions. Okay. Boundaries. Yes, unconditional love does not mean allowing people to walk all over you. And one of the most important things to understand is that abuse is not love. Okay. And a lot of the things that we do in the name of love are actually abuse. And one of the ways I can talk about this is that I carried on my journey and I went to Southeast Asia, and I was really scared to go to Southeast Asia. And one of the reasons was that I had heard a lot of stories about children being abused in Southeast Asia. And I was really scared because I know myself. And in some ways, I'm very like my mother. And I wasn't sure that I could witness something like that and not get involved and not take action. And in fact, I remember I stayed at this really nice little B&B near here, and I was talking to the people there about this journey, and they'd spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, and they said, oh yes, it's terrible, it's terrible. I thought, uh-oh. But I knew I had to go. And later, a friend of mine also said that she again witnessed some pretty rough stuff in Thailand, places like that. But on my journey, everywhere I went, I never witnessed anything negative in terms of children. Everywhere I went, I saw children being treated with absolute love, being treated like the most amazing people. Could you say? I saw laughter, I saw joy. There really was the only time was really on one point. We were on a tour with a group, and we were doing a home dinner, and one person in the group was bossy, being very bossy with the children of this family. And we, there was a moment I thought, this is not, you shouldn't be telling these children off, because they're not your children. And who are you to be telling them how they should behave in their own home? So that was a moment, but that wasn't nothing to do with the people there. It was to do with tourists, us as tourists, thinking that we had permission to teach, had permission to tell people how to be. And it's very important, I think, we respect that people do not necessarily want us to be their teachers. We often give advice when we're not actually being asked for advice. Anyway, coming back to this. So I did my whole trip of Southeast Asia, and I came back to England, and suddenly I started to witness all this verbal abuse of children. And it was all around me. It was in the supermarkets, with people yelling at their children, telling them to behave. It was in the changing rooms, with mothers telling their children that they were awful and they were just behaving so badly and they were embarrassing them. And it was really kind of horrible. And I was suddenly aware as well of all the people around me, the pressure, the way they talked to their children about their homework, about their grades, about their school. And I heard it, and it was almost like hearing it for the first time. And I realized that what we were saying, as Western parents and aunties as well, and uncles, was, If you don't do what I say, then I will treat you as if I hate you. I will treat you, I will talk to you like this, like you're the worst person. I will send you to a room. I will withhold my love, and I will withhold my kindness and hugs and care and all the rest of it. And in that moment, I realized that it was me. It was me with the children growing up, that instead of just setting a boundary, instead of just saying, hey, you're going to need to go and do some homework, or you need to go to bed, or no, you can't have any pudding until you finish your dinner, or no, you can't watch television unless you eat your dinner. Shouting, telling people off, saying, really saying you're bad, you're a bad person, you're a bad child. If you don't do what I tell you, if you don't go to bed when I say, if you don't get the grades, if you don't do your homework, if you don't study what I want you to study, if you don't do this thing that I want you to do. And that's what we do, is we practice conditional love. We learn it from our parents, from our aunties, our uncles, or grandparents. You have to be like this. You have to do what I tell you to do. If you don't do what I tell you to do, I won't love you anymore. And what's so detrimental, what's so negative about that? It's not the boundaries. You know, when we're well loved and somebody says something like that, acts that way, okay, yes, it's hurtful, yes, it's painful, but we know we're not gonna have our dinner taken away forever. You know, we know we're gonna get fed, even if we get into trouble. But the problem is also that we equate the feeling of love being taken away with us being bad. So sometimes then the parent leaves. Maybe they're getting a divorce. Maybe they've got to work away from home. Maybe they're ill. Maybe they die. All of these things, when they happen, when we're kids, we've already learned that when love is taken away, when the person is taken away, we did something wrong. We're bad. And so what we do is we punish ourselves, because nobody needs to punish us anymore. The love has been taken away and we feel bad, we suffer, we hurt, it's painful, it's harsh. And instead of just accepting that's part of our journey, their journey, perhaps when a parent dies, we make it our fault.